Hello, and welcome to the FanFiction Book Club podcast, a weekly podcast that explores the good, the bad, and the cringy of fan fiction. Hosted by me, SG, and my lovely co-hosts, Poppy.
Hi.
Ollie.
Hiya.
And Tstan.
Hello.
Every month, we scour the internet to bring you 4 different fanfic reads, and our theme this month is Super Mario. Check out our website at fanfictionbookclub.com or follow us on Twitter and Instagram at fanfictionados for the full lineup of stories for the month and to connect with us on the web. So, the fan fiction we are discussing this week is Vicissitude by Cindy on Archive of Our Own. This work was written on on April 18th, 2019, so fairly recently. The word count is 26,334 words, and the tags include bittersweet, fluff and angst, domestic fluff, humor, slice of life, drama, family, loss of parents, death, fic, marriage, romance, and OCs. The relationships are Bowser Jr. OC, Koopa Bowser, Peach Hime, Peach Toadstool, that's Princess Peach, if you want a third name for her, and then Mario and Princess Peach. So, guys, what did you think of the read?
Boy.
Interesting.
This fic proves that not all fan fictions on Archive of Our Own are masterpieces.
I am amazed you came to the conclusion that they were masterpieces.
Well, I mean, I feel like the general consensus of Archive of Our Own is like, oh, you can get like the best fan fictions because of the tags and stuff, and like fanfiction.net is like the place like everyone goes, and it's just like anyone can post. Who knows what you're gonna find? But Archive of Our Own is where you're gonna find some good stuff. This is not it.
Well, you have a better chance of finding good stuff because AO3 like lets you search within tags, while fan fiction, I can't even handle that website. I can't even handle it. So this story, there were like 4 that I was teetering between. And I read 3 of them, and I was like, they're okay. And I didn't read this one, and for whatever reason, I picked it. I probably should have picked one of the other 3. I'll link them in the description if we decide that they'd be more interesting. But this story was like a weird situation where even though we searched it within the terms of rated teen, I don't know that this was a rated teen story.
No, it's like, no, it's not.
In the rating, it says teen and up audiences. It's not strictly just teen.
Yeah, but it includes teens, so it should be appropriate for teens.
Yeah, I wouldn't want my child reading this. A little much for the young teens.
Yeah.
Eye-opening for the older teens. But so the summary for this story is an aging Bowser has stopped menacing the Mushroom Kingdom and lives vicariously through the now grown Junior by getting him married to Mario and Peach's daughter the right way. But why is Bowser in such a rush to see Junior married off? Question mark, question mark, question mark. And as a little side note, Poppy, originally posted on... What was that?
You're reading the summary, and I was like, oh no, it says it.
So
you're gonna throw this back in my face.
Is it really?
So, as a little side note, it says originally posted on ff.net, and we all know what FF stands for. Fanfiction.net on June 27th, 2007. My grammar has improved since then, but I left this as is, which explains a lot.
Oh.
Kind of feel bad now.
You were smack talking AO3 for no reason.
This is still on AO3.
Which is funny that, so they wrote this in 2007. I wonder why they published it in 2019.
Yeah, 12 years
In
later.
April, April 2019. Yeah. Oh God, that's so long.
Yeah.
That's so long ago. Wow.
It's like, I don't know about you, but if I write a fan fiction, as soon as it's posted, I'm like, I'm not touching it again. Like it's gone forever now.
I wonder why they thought, like, they had to be constantly thinking about this fanfic, because I know there is only one fanfic I ever posted on the internet, and I have no idea how to find it.
Yeah.
And it has to do with Taylor Swift.
God.
Oh no.
Tstan knows what I'm talking about.
Oh no.
Yeah, like, maybe because of their grammar was so, like, they thought it was so bad that they were like, I can't let it sit out there anymore. I have to fix it. Like,
But
it was probably one of those things that kept them up at night or something.
But they said they left this as is. They said, my grammar has improved, but I left this as is. I mean, this grammar wasn't as atrocious as, like, some that I've seen. Like, I could read it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I interpreted that as, like, they fixed their grammar but left, like, the story as is. But maybe not.
I can imagine
I don't
this
know.
person
What the
hasn't
heck?
touched it. Like, that's
Yeah.
2007 writing. I really need to read the summaries when we read these stories, because I was reading the story and certain elements of it are reminiscent of the things people would write about in, like, 2007 through 2009 in their fan fictions. Like when they were talking about the wedding, the author went on describing the food list for some reason. And I'm like, who cares about that? But back then, they would always talk about, like, what people's outfits looked like, what kind of food they were eting, and, like, way too much detail. Like, remember? Like, that's what they were doing on these fanfics.
Descriptions.
So that makes so much more sense now, because I was like, this is really reminiscent of, like, fan fiction from back in that time. And then there are additional notes for the story. So vicissitude, just a little additional information about that word, is a noun, and it means a change of condition, succession of one set of circumstances by another. And then also, Mario's accent is thick because he's older. I based it off of an elderly Italian neighbor I had as a kid.
And also, you said SG that back when we read, or when we talked about the other fan fiction, man, I wish that they had, like, the Italian accent. This
Man.
was too much.
Yeah,
it was too much Italian
much.
accent.
It was almost like not quite racist levels of.
It was like hard to read at points. It's like there's too many A's.
It seems like all they did was drop A's in there.
Yeah, and in places that it didn't make sense. Like, once we get to that part, I will rewrite a line and just, like, see what makes sense.
I'm interested to hear. I know. I got, like, I was excited when I saw this note. I was like, oh my gosh, he's gonna have, like, an Italian accent. This is gonna be what I wanted Tstan's story about Luigi and Daisy to be. And then I read it and I'm like, oh, he's not like a grizzled old Italian man.
It says a lot.
Ha!
So the story starts out with the main character of the story is Bowser. And so Bowser is getting, it feels weird, like, saying his name, talking about him in a serious manner. But Bowser's getting older, and he's had a couple heart attacks, and his health isn't what it used to be. And he wants to have his son find happiness and be set in life in a way that he wasn't. For people who follow the Super Mario fandom, Bowser is a evil king type character, and he is constantly stealing Peach from the Mushroom Kingdom. And in this story, his reasons for taking her are because he had a really big crush on her to the point where he was in love with her. And a freak accident happens in their past, and Peach... I shouldn't laugh at this. Peach falls...
It was 10 years ago.
10 years from the present. She fell down a flight of stairs and died. And so...
And died.
Mario found her. Her neck was broken. Holy crap.
It was very traumatic. It was very traumatic. But I was like, of all the ways Peach could have died, like she could have just died in her sleep or something, but she fell down some stairs and traumatized Bowser that this happened. And so this is kind of some backstory. And so Bowser is constantly thinking about Peach and like what they could have been, even though she's married to Mario. So...
But he did stop kidnapping her once she got married. Like,
yes, I have that quote.
The respect.
Just because you love someone, that's not a good reason to kidnap them.
No.
Nothing's a good reason to kidnap somebody. Oh my god, Peach made the right choice in marrying Mario and not Bowser.
Because he respected her and didn't kidnap her to show his affections. So that's just some kind of backstory on Bowser. He's like old, aging, and he wanted to be with Peach, but he didn't know how to be with her. And then she died, and he has all this regret in his heart about that. And so the story opens up with his son. And his son is Bowser Jr., who I believe is in, like, the racing games. And I don't know if he's in any, like, platforming games, too.
Oh, yeah.
But,
he's
in the platforming games, too.
He's, like the little bosses. He's a mini boss sometimes. And he's like a boss at the end of the levels, but Bowser's the main boss. You know?
Okay. The final boss.
Yeah. Bowser's final boss. Junior is just a boss.
Look at you, Poppy, being more of a gamer than me right now.
I just know a lot about Mario, and that's it.
He also had a relatively big part in Super Mario Sunshine.
So that's some backstory, and then the story opens up with Bowser Jr., and he is really good friends with Peach and Mario's daughter, which is the OC of the story, and an OC is an original character that a fanfiction author creates. Sometimes it's a self-insertion character, sometimes it's just something cool that they want to add to the story. And so the purpose of this OC was to become the fictional child of Mario and Peach, and her name is Cherry. And of course, Cherry and Bowser Jr. are really into each other, and they grew up together, but they're too shy to tell each other that they're into each other. So there's a lot of tension going on in the beginning of the story. And so the story starts out where Cherry and Bowser Jr. are like hanging out and stuff, and she's hanging out with him while he's working on his car. And then Bowser Sr. comes in and sees them together. And his big goal for the story is to get these two characters together and married, and he wants his son to have like the happy life that he didn't have. And I'm gonna interrupt this with one question. Who's Bowser Jr.'s mom?
That's a wonderful question.
No.
This is gonna be weird, and I thought about this the entire time I was reading this fic. The only answer Nintendo has ever given us is that Bowser Jr. thinks Peach is his mom.
What?
That's in this story. That makes no sense.
That is not work with this story at all.
The whole thing is that Bowser never got Peach. So, like...
So his son could.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I was thinking this whole time... Uh-huh.
Who is the mom? Who is she?
And I was thinking, if he does have a mom, this is just horrible that Bowser had a kid with this lady, and then she's completely tossed aside, and he's obsessed with Peach.
There are multiple children.
Oh, that's right. That's right. There are multiple children at the wedding.
I think Bowser Jr. has like 3 siblings or something like that.
So continuity is in question here.
I don't know.
So that was like the first question that popped into my head with the whole Peach thing. Like, if he's so obsessed with Peach, how do you end up having kids with another lady? Because you think he'd like keep himself pure for her. It's like, Peach died, I'll never love and or be with anyone or anything ever again.
Sorry, you think that the Bowser in this story is keeping himself pure?
Well, that is before we got to the part that we will discuss.
Oh, okay. Okay.
This is like early impressions. We're still in chapter 1. People are still innocent. We're not giving wedding night advice to young men. So they do that, or they're working on a car, they're chatting. It's just kind of like developing the story and the characters and establishing that adult Bowser has some health concerns. And then after that, he goes up to Peach's grave, and then you find out that Bowser has apparently been coming to her grave every day, and he leaves flowers, and he talks to her, and you learn that he took her death really hard, and he's the only one really going to visit her grave now. And then the story keeps going and going, and then we reach a point where Bowser is out eating cheap kebabs, whatever those are. Can it be
cheeps are like fish?
Oh, okay. I was thinking they were like the weird plant mouth things.
Oh no, those are piranha plants.
Okay, because I was imagining like those on a stick, and I was like,
Yeah. No, cheeps are
fish. Okay, then that's much more delicious. So they're eating cheap kebabs, and this is the point where you kind of figure out how much of a sleazy old man Bowser is. He's trying to give his son like advice on how to hit on Cherry while they're eating dinner together. So this is a scene. It's kind of cute, but as the story goes on, you get why it's kind of weird. Bowser taught Junior how to accidentally brush his forearm against Cherry's shoulder when he reached for his napkin. The kebabs were greasy, so there were plenty of opportunities to pull this off. If this works, kid, you'll have all I always wanted, he leaned back. Her love. I love your hair, said Junior. What? Cherry glanced at him, blinking. This afternoon it was shiny. I guess I didn't notice. Junior glanced towards Bowser. Bowser made a pushing motion with his hands and pointed to his eyes. Junior went on. That it makes your eyes look really... He glanced over again, fishing for a word. Bowser picked up his blue napkin and pointed to it. Junior's face brightened and he finished. Blue! And I like blue. He peeked at Bowser again. Bowser curled his thumb and index finger into an OK sign, grinning. Cherry's face was bright red. She giggled and turned back towards Bowser. Bowser dropped his napkin on his kebab stick and leaned back, pretending to be bored. She shook her head and smiled up at Junior. You're so cute, Junior. And Bowser tilted so far back that his chair tipped over. The Koopa King scrambled back into his seat in time to see Junior's face turn as red as Cherry's dress. So throughout this story, there are all these little moments where Bowser is like coaching his son on how to get with this girl. And they just get like weirder and weirder as the story goes on. That was a pretty tame one.
It's like, it's kind of cute at first. It's like he's helping her get a girlfriend. That's sweet. And then like, chapter 3, you're like, oh,
I know, right?
No.
Chapter 3, it all takes a turn. So with Bowser's help, Cherry and Bowser Jr. are like kind of dancing around each other. And then there's a carnival that comes up in chapter 2, and Bowser asks Cherry to go to the carnival with him. And so they go to the carnival and have a little date. And at the same time, Sherry talks Bowser into having a heart-to-heart with her dad Mario to kind of like clear the air about Princess Peach, because at the funeral Bowser had this big hullabaloo with Mario saying that it was his fault that Peach fell down the stairs and snapped her neck. And I don't know why that's so funny. Probably because it's so ridiculous.
It's just it's just a terrible way to kill off a beloved character.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Just poor little Peach in her dress just rolling down the stairs, and
yeah,
it's sad.
Yeah.
And then Mario finds out that Bowser also kind of blames himself for her death, because if he was there, he could have saved her. So both of the guys are like, if I was there, I could have saved her. And they're like, well, I'm not really mad at you, dude. I mean, like, we did everything we could, and now they're cool. And
they don't have a huge history of battling. And
I know, not like they have this huge history of multiple games with him stealing Peach all the time.
His wife.
Probably not his wife then, but
his future wife.
His future wife. Totally gonna gloss over all that for this little heart-to-heart. And then the two kings start talking, and Bowser brings up the idea of, hey, what if my son married your daughter? And then Mario's like, I don't know, man. And he's like, you know, they've had crushes on each other for like 5 ever. So Mario's like, well, I don't know, maybe. And then Bowser talks to him about how it would help their military. It would help the Mushroom Kingdom's military if they joined them. It would help his kingdom's like healthcare system if they came together. And the fact that they liked each other would be a plus too. So they come to this agreement that, I'd be okay with your son marrying my daughter. You have my blessing to do this. And then 5 minutes later, Bowser goes up to Bowser Jr. and says, hey, you should go propose to Cherry.
They're on their first date.
They're on their first date. That happened really fast.
They just had their first kiss. They're on their first date. Now he's going to propose to her. Yes. I was so confused. I was like, I thought that they were dating before. And I was like, and this was a long relationship. But then I was like, no, they just kissed for the first time. Yeah. I'm like, wait. What's their backstory? Like, they've been friends for a long time, but what's happening?
Yeah. I was thinking about that. I'm like, he's not going to make him propose right now. And he literally just went and made him propose. And she's like, oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah.
And it was as easy as that. And then the story goes on, and for a whole chapter and a half, they're doing wedding preparations. And none of that was very important. It kind of felt like filler. So I'm not going to get into it. But while they're in the process of getting ready for the wedding, Bowser's condition is getting worse. And he has, does he have a full heart attack or a mini heart attack?
I think it's a mini heart attack.
Yeah. It's not as severe as his 2 previous ones, but he has another heart attack. And his son's getting really worried. Everyone's just trying to kind of come to terms with the next big heart attack he has. He's probably going to die. And then Bowser's just trying to play it off because he wants to see his son happy and secure in life before he passes away. They get married, but there's a moment we have to address before the 2 main characters get married. And there's a point where Bowser Sr. takes Bowser Jr. aside before their wedding night, and they have a little conversation about the birds and the bees. And I was not expecting that to happen. Or for it to be as explicit as it was, considering it's a teen-rated story.
It's so far, it's the story has been fine. Their relationship progressed quickly. It's been a cute, innocent story so far. Yes. And then this chapter happened, and it's Oh.
We'll let you guys read that section at your own discretion.
Proceed with caution.
I know.
essentially.
Proceed with caution. If you haven't read this story already, if you have, I'm so sorry. I should have checked this book. The one story I didn't pre-read.
Thankfully,
And it
we're
has
all adults.
questionable moments. Thankfully, we're all adults. Hopefully, you all are as well. But if you're not, I won't tell anybody.
We're older.
We try to keep it as clean as possible. This was unfortunately unavoidable.
Yeah.
But that happens, which was really awkward, a little bit funny, very informative. For young men.
About Bowser tells Junior, like, not only like this is what happened, like this is what the birds and the bees are, like this is what happens. And he's like, no, this is exactly how you do it. It's like, what the why? Why was this necessary?
I think it's good advice. I think young men need advice like that in their lives. I don't know that advice needed to be imparted through the story or involved in the story. No. But that happens. So that's like totally off track. So they get married. They have their wedding night, which is like right on the verge of getting steamy, and luckily they shut that thing down. Thank God. And then after that, you kind of get into the post-wedding life, and Bowser's condition is getting much worse. And then he has the heart attack that ends his life. And in the story, he passes away, and he has this moment of clarity in his passing where he's reunited in spirit with Peach. And I guess they go off into the sunset together. And I'm not sure if that was like if that was just a hallucination on his part, or if that was a spiritual element to this story.
I hope it was a hallucination, just because I don't want to believe that Peach would.
I don't want to believe it either. That doesn't make any sense. Like,
it doesn't make any sense.
She seemed
like if she wanted to get with him, she would have in life. Yeah.
So I kind of read it as a hallucination, like at the end. And so that happens, and then the story continues, and then Bowser Jr. and Cherry's story takes over, and they talk about, and the author kind of just runs through the process of grief that Bowser Jr. is going through, and that the rest of the family is going through to different degrees. They have the funeral, and then
which is horrifying.
I was reading at the end how they're like, and then they tied his limbs and his tail to him and stuck him back in his shell. And I'm like, I can't even visualize what this is looking like.
Well, so their whole thing was like the Koopa way, the way that Koopas do things is they mummify the dead, they pull all their organs out, they burn them, crush them up, and mix the ashes and the dust with food and serve the food to the funeral attendants. And I was like, why is this in this fan fiction?
Well, I actually thought that was an interesting bit of world building. I didn't have an issue with it because I was like, that's their culture. That's fine.
I had an issue with it.
But they didn't
I was
doing
just
that.
like, no.
They were just saying that's their way. That's not what they did at the funeral, though.
Yes, it is.
Did they?
Yes.
I thought
they had a whole thing where Mario was like looking at all the food, like, oh my god, I don't want to eat Bowser's organ. And Junior was like, this dish is clean, and he was like, thank you. And so him and Cherry both ate the dish that didn't have any Bowser in it.
And totally missed that.
I totally forgot about that. It's been a bit since I read it.
I missed that, and I'm horrified.
Did you miss that too, Tristan?
I really wasn't I'll be honest, I started skimming at the end.
Oh,
Um,
I kind of started skimming too. When I read that, I thought they were just saying like, "Oh yeah, that's what we usually do." But they said something about Bowser having an open casket.
So they pulled out all of his organs and then like stitch him back up and put him in the shell so that and like embalmed him, I guess, or something.
They just did it with his organs.
Oh God.
They didn't do his whole body. They just did his organs and put it in the face.
Yeah, it's just his organs.
Okay,
Oh,
well that's fine. That's not too big.
Is it? That is some stranger to strange land
It's not like
level of crazy.
It's not light cannibalism or anything.
They're like dragon people. What are you expecting? Dragon people are hardcore.
Diet cannibalism.
Yeah.
Diet cannibalism.
I can't believe I missed that. Yeah, I thought they were just
Less
talking
calories.
about that as like a hypothetical. And then they throw their bodies into a volcano or something. That's so funny.
But no, he, instead of throwing his body in a volcano, gets buried next to Peach and gets a statue of him.
And then he gets to flex.
He gets a statue of him kissing her hand, which is weird because she was married to a different
Mario.
person.
Yeah.
It's
Poor
like, it just
Mario.
seems in poor taste. Yeah, poor Mario. Like, he's the king, which is a weird thought. A weird thing to
It
think
is,
about.
it is.
Mario's
It's
the
a very
king.
weird thing to think about. Like he's making court decisions and stuff.
Mario the plumber.
But I was upset at the statue thing. And like, what about Mario?
Yes.
Plot.
This entire story, I was thinking, what about Mario? Because Cherry, his daughter, seems to be hanging out with Bowser and treats him more like a father figure than her own father. Peach is dead, and for whatever reason, Mario can't go to her grave, and he's kind of bullied by Bowser, even though he's Peach's husband, so he's the one suffering the most in all of this.
This is a wild story.
And then he can't even have a proper Italian accent, poor man.
Oh god.
Oh my god.
Oh God.
So excessive.
So that's like pretty much the story. The funeral happens. He passes away. Bowser Jr. like goes into a depression. The epilogue. There's an epilogue to the story, and it's pretty much like Bowser reaching acceptance. And Cherry, his waifu, helping him do that. And then that's it. That's the story in a nutshell. So yeah. So I guess we can go on to talk about general thoughts. So what did you guys think of the like plot of the story? We've kind of made comments on it as we've gone along. But what are you, do you have anything else you want to expand on?
I don't know, man. Like I don't know. I don't know what to say about the plot. I think I've already said it.
The reason I picked this story and what I gravitate more towards in fan fiction, if it's a fandom that I am not into personally, is stories that are like a character study or that explore an element of that fandom that is not really addressed in any way in the main canon of that fandom. And so Bowser's story is not something that I don't know that people think about it very often. I don't know if within the fandom, if he has like a big following of people who try and figure out his inner workings, but I always felt kind of bad for him because he was just kind of unnecessarily evil and mean. And I don't know, was there ever really a reason behind why he was the way he was? Was he just a jerk?
I think he just wanted Peach for his own, and
yeah, he just
kidnapped her.
Pretty much.
He just wanted to steal this chick to do rated G things with. I don't know. This is like a kid's game, so what?
No.
What's he gonna do with her once he gets her?
Well, in the most recent game, the whole plot is he's trying to marry her. So like, this isn't completely out of left field.
So he can have the Mushroom Kingdom, or because he's in love with her?
That's the
never
thing.
clarified.
Because it
It's like,
doesn't even.
does Bowser want Peach because he loves her, or does he want Peach so that he can be king of the Mushroom Kingdom?
And if he can be king of the Mushroom Kingdom, why doesn't he just use his army and overthrow the Mushroom Kingdom?
Good question.
That was like the first 5 games.
Before he stole Peach, or did he do Peach and do that?
Both.
Do her, but did he take Peach? Did he take
Both.
Peach and do that? Okay. So anyway, I just kind of always felt a little bad for Bowser. So I thought it'd be interesting to give him a little spotlight this month as a character and see a story about him, and a story that shows a different side of him, not the jerk who's trying to overthrow the Mushroom Kingdom and marry Princess Peach, but this old man he's had a rough past of his own making, and he's at an age now where he can reflect on it and see that he made some bad decisions and he wants better for his kid. So that's what kind of drew me to the story, because it's such a human story, that concept. And it started out really cute, but it just devolved into kind of craziness.
Yeah.
And it kind of it was really weird, because there were moments where and they were the moments with Bowser, like I really connected with him trying to deal with the fact that he was going to die, like knowing that the end was so soon, how he tried to see the best in where he was in life and think about his son, and some of the somewhat immature ways in which he tried to deflect from his situation. I thought those were really cool moments in the story, and they were really cool moments of character expression and character development, but they were just like offset by these really shallow moments, like the whole wedding scene and the random birds and the bees chat that they did before the wedding. The wedding just kind of seemed like it was taking away from what could have been like a really heartfelt story. It kind of cheapened it a bit. What did you guys think? That whole like prepping for the wedding and all of that. Because like just the Bowser scenes, or Bowser like talking with his son, like I felt those moments. But all the wedding stuff, anything involving Cherry, I didn't feel it. I didn't feel it at all.
I felt like the author was like trying to flesh out his characters, especially Bowser. And all the scenes were just so like, I don't know, it just like nothing felt real. Like they're just like putting in these scenes and having the characters act out certain things, and it just didn't.
Yeah, the only moments
I don't know. I think it just kind of like cheapened things.
Yeah, the only moments I felt something was when Bowser and his son were having conversations about like how to cope with the fact that Bowser's dying, and for Bowser to try and help his son to realize that he can survive on his own and that he has a right to happiness. Like those were like the moments that I felt, and they were really good moments, but they were just surrounded in all this unnecessary early or late 2000s fanfic style writing.
I felt like this was a really hard read because I just could not get into it.
Yeah, I really struggled too.
Yeah.
I didn't really get into it until his last heart attack, when he was just kind of disassociating. And that's the only point where I was like, I read it and my eyes were like glued to the screen, like, oh my god. But other than that, it was kind of, because Bowser was like the only character that I really felt like had real feelings. Everyone else they were kind of shallow. And I guess
Cherry.
Yeah. Like Cherry, she was a prop. It was kind of sad. I mean,
Curse of the original character.
It was weird because the way that Bowser talked about her was kind of like she was a Peach replacement. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, that was weird. But even after all this, I'm not gonna lie, I cried my eyes out when Bowser died. But that's just my own personal struggles with parental issues. So it's like that was just particularly difficult for me to read, but still cried. You know?
Which I totally get, because it was a really like that was the moment in the story that you really felt. You really connected with his situation. You really thought about from like Junior's perspective, like losing a parent. That's a crazy thing to go through. And it's very emotional. And I mean, kudos to the author for allowing that moment to shine, but it was just that one moment, really. It was just surrounded by all of this stuff that really didn't need to be in the story if it was at its core. The relationship.
Well, I mean,
between,
at the same time, it's like the wedding, like the whole point, like Bowser was trying to push his son to get married so that he could be there and he could see his son's dreams come true, you know?
Yeah.
And so in that sense, like I didn't mind I liked the interactions between Junior and Cherry, and the way that they talked about each other to other people or like in their own inner monologue. Like they both seemed to really, really love each other, and I thought that was really sweet. But yeah, they like Junior was a little bit more fleshed out, but Cherry was very one-dimensional. And I don't know.
I almost wish the story was in Junior's perspective.
Oh
yeah.
I feel like I don't know. I feel like I liked his character, and I wish I could like if it was in his point of view rather than Bowser, and watching, you know, his relationship with his father rather than Bowser's relationship with his son. I thought would have been more interesting.
I think
I just couldn't really relate to Bowser.
Yeah, it was hard for me to relate to Bowser just because he was a kidnapper.
Yeah.
So
I just completely disregarded that part of his life. I just thought like he turned a new leaf. But I like what you're saying, Ollie, because I think what would have married the marriage and Bowser's death would have been if it was more from Bowser Jr.'s perspective, because then having all those wedding interactions would make sense. If the main focus of the story is Bowser, then we shouldn't be spending as much time as we're spending on just like general wedding stuff. It seemed like there was a lot of general wedding stuff and not necessarily like just Bowser and his son talking about the wedding, which I think if the story was truly from Bowser's perspective, then that's all the wedding interaction we'd really have, and maybe occasionally seeing Cherry. But it's mostly about him and his son coming to grips with the future of what Junior's life is becoming, and how Bowser's losing his life soon. So that's a good point that you bring up. I think that probably would have saved the story for me as if it was from Junior's perspective. Dealing with all of that. I wonder why. Do you think they were consciously deciding what perspective to take, or do you think they were just kind of following a train of thought? Because even though it's Bowser's perspective, there's a lot of moments where it's not truly Bowser's perspective, where it switches to Bowser Jr. or to Cherry.
I feel like it was following a thought, and then as the author kept going, that they were like, oh, this would make more sense in Junior's perspective or Mario's perspective or Cherry's perspective. And so they just switched perspectives real quick and then went back to Bowser when it made sense to be with Bowser.
What do you guys think of that? Do you think that helped the story or hurt the story? The fact that they jumped around between characters?
I didn't mind it.
I don't know.
It was all right. but I think it would have been stronger if the author had just stuck with one.
Yeah, it was consistent.
Because I can tell you that I want to say it was the first chapter, maybe the second, where we got like an interlude in Cherry's room with Mario. I was like, why does this matter?
I know, why is this even here? Oh, I totally forgot, but there is an adorable part in the story. I do want to give the author kudos on this, where they're about to go on their date, and they're both getting ready, and they both have zits on their face, and they're really embarrassed to tell each other, so they both show up like with their faces covered. And then they're like, why are you covering your face? Because I have a zit. And they're like, I have one too. And I'm like, this is the most adorable thing
Very cute
on the planet. Shout out to the author. That's probably one of the cutest little first date situations I've ever read.
That was sweet.
That was very sweet. Sorry, tangent.
I mean, I think the point of the whole Cherry Mario thing in Cherry's room was just to show that Mario didn't like Bowser's. Yeah, Bowser and Bowser Jr. He didn't want Cherry to be hanging around with him.
I guess that makes sense.
Yeah, like that was just the whole point of that thing.
I would call that a given, considering their history.
I know, right?
I love the author said it was because at Peach's funeral they got into a fight, but like also God, how old is Mario? The decades history before then?
I know, right? They have a lot of history.
How old is Mario and Bowser supposed to be in this?
I thought they were in their like 50s.
They make it sound like they're elderly. Like I know like Bowser was in like heart failure or whatever, but like he kept complaining he was so old and he couldn't walk up a hill. And I'm like, you sound like an older, like 70s.
I bet they're in their like 60s or 70s, probably.
Oh, I thought it was like they were in their
Junior
50s.
and Terry like 18?
How old is Cherry?
Old enough to get married.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean much.
I don't think that was specified.
Yeah,
like,
I don't specify. They were very vague with the ages.
I don't know how old Bowser is in relation to Mario.
Cherry was a kid when Peach died. So, I mean, she could have been up to possibly 12. So maybe she's between like 18 and 22.
Yeah.
If Peach died 10 years
ago.
ago.
And how old is Bowser compared to Mario? Like,
Bowser's older than Mario, I believe.
Bowser could be like 20 years older than Mario. Like, we don't know. No.
Yeah.
Dragons don't age like humans.
Yeah.
Turtle dragons.
Bowser a king?
Yes.
King Koopa.
Not king of the Mushroom Kingdom. That's Mario.
No. Yes.
Does he live outside of the Mushroom Kingdom? Because it sounds like they're neighbors.
I guess he lives outside of the Mushroom Kingdom and then comes to the Mushroom Kingdom to kidnap Peach. Like
on the monthly.
Yeah, he's king of the Koopa Kingdom. Which I'm judging by, the games is like right next door.
Seems like it. What did you guys think of the writing?
Writing was fine. There's only one thing that author in the beginning, author would say that a character was crossing their eyes, when I think that they meant the character was like furrowing their brow.
I didn't catch that.
It's like in like the first like 1 or 2 chapters where it's like his eyes crossed. I'm like, what? It's like, no, his brow in context of the
conversation
thing, it doesn't make any sense. Let me get back to chapter 1 real quick.
Yeah. I glossed over that. Probably because with this story, and we talked about it on an earlier podcast episode this month, it's hard for me to imagine these characters in these situations, so I'm not visualizing anything in my head when I'm reading this. I'm literally just like reading it.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. Let's see. I'll just read you the little bit before it.
Okay.
Junior made a face. Cherry shot him a glare and bent to peer into the shell. She could just make out Bowser's russet eyes and bushy eyebrows. His weeping was so obvious a blind person would notice. Rather than berate him about it, Cherry just smiled gently and said, "There's a lot of pollen in the air today. Come on, let's go back to your castle and I'll make you a cheap kebab." Bowser's eyes crossed as he considered the offer. He did love those kebabs, and nobody makes them like Cherry's. No, that's not correct. It's
his brow
furrowed. In concentration or consideration. You don't cross your eyes when you're considering something. So
that's such a funny thought if he is actually crossing his eyes as he considering something. Like if he goes, "Oh."
I know. So that was the one thing.
So, did we have any other writing comments? I take the silence as a no.
No.
That's all has been said.
Sorry, hacking up along.
No. So how well do you guys think they stuck to the fandom?
I mean, in the past, like, Bowser kidnapped Peach and Mario saved her, and this was in the story, but just in the past, so this was just in the future. So yeah, great, good.
Days of future, past, present, here and now. Yeah, like we talked about for the last two stories. I mean, there isn't much of a fandom. There isn't much in the fandom that limits the possibilities of what can happen, other than who Bowser Jr.'s mom is. That's the big plot hole in this story that I'm very curious about.
It's a plot hole in the canon too, so
I guess it's sticking to the fandom in that sense.
I didn't even know they had children.
Yeah.
I had to Google all this stuff, and I was like, "Oh, Harry and Bowser Jr." Not know that they had children in this.
Mm-hmm. Well, Peach and Mario don't have a kid. She's an OC.
Oh, she?
Yeah, Cherry's an OC. So
okay, that makes sense because I Googled it and there's all this fan art, and I was just like, oh.
But there are unofficial characters that fans have made that everyone has just accepted as part of the fandom. I don't think Cherry's one of them. I didn't look her up.
No.
But she's not an officially accepted, isn't there a female sexy Bowser character that was crazy on the internet for a bit there?
That? Yes.
I think that was just from Mario Odyssey. It was just the whole thing with the game. Oh, was it? No.
It was a mushroom effect from one of the other games, not Odyssey.
Oh, I thought it was the hat thing from Odyssey.
It turned Toadette into a Peach clone. And so they took that mushroom item and turned everyone into a Peach clone.
Oh.
That is where Bowsette came from. It's just Bowser in a costume, essentially.
Yeah.
Lovely.
So I have a little Wikipedia description.
I don't know if it makes it better or worse.
Well, this is the Wikipedia description. Bowsette, or Koopa Hime, is a fan-made gender-bent version of the Mario franchise character Bowser, in which he is transformed to resemble the character Princess Peach using a power-up.
There it is. Yeah.
Did you send it?
That's it. Bob's your uncle.
Their uncle.
Just put her in the Discord.
Well, you picked a good one, at least.
I mean, it's definitely a PG-13 one.
Yeah.
This is in our private Discord, so no one else can get into this. Just Google it. Just Google Bowsette if you don't know what we're talking about.
Safe search on. Safe search on.
Or safe search off if that's what you're into.
Just be warned.
But 18
y'all,
plus.
the internet is thirsty.
And by thirsty, we don't mean for water. So, what would you guys rate this story on a scale of 1 to 5, are we doing mushrooms or shells?
Mushrooms.
We're doing
Mushrooms, Phil,
Mushrooms.
yeah.
How many mushrooms would you rate this story, guys? Be gentle, I'm sensitive.
I'm gonna give it a 2. 2 mushrooms out of 5.
Why?
Because
Interrogate.
Wow, really aggressive.
because of the all of it.
Because
gestures broadly and everything.
Oh my gosh.
It wasn't terrible. There were some redeeming qualities about it. That's why it's not a 1, but it was a 2.
All right. Tstan?
Sure. Okay, I'll go next.
Yeah.
I am going to give it a 3.
Generous.
I saw what the author was going for. I just think that it wasn't very well executed, which could have been a matter of inexperience. I have no idea how long that author had been writing before they posted on fanfic.net. I have no idea, how much experience they had. But I think the idea behind it was good. So, 3 mushrooms for me.
Well, going on to me, I struggle because I liked the characters. I didn't really appreciate Bowser or Mario. I just felt like the story went on longer than it should. Like I would give it 1.5 mushrooms. I'm sticking with 1.5.
Fair. That's totally fair. I will be generous and give this story 2 mushrooms because I really liked the idea of it. The execution wasn't where it could have been, but the fact that it jumps around and we're trying to get 2 different experiences together but not give enough attention to either one, it is what made it kind of fall short for me. So 2 out of 5 mushrooms on my part. Thank you for listening to the FanFiction Book Club. Our pick this week was Vicissitude by Cindy. You can find this story and more of the author's works on Archive of Our Own. Theme song is Funkorama by Kevin MacLeod. You can find more of Kevin's music on incompetech.filmmusic.io/artist/Kevin-MacLeod. The works discussed on the FanFiction Book Club are not our own. All characters mentioned belong to their original authors. Until next week, bye!
Bye!